This is episode 14 of I Love This Album, and I'm going a little bit off script, a little bit off brand. I'm not sure what you call it. When I had the idea, this great idea for this massively successful project, my idea was I talked about all the discographies of some of my really top bands, but then I realized that there were a lot of albums that I still love that I consider my all-time favorite albums. They're just not necessarily by my favorite band, so I thought I want to talk about some of these other albums that I consider to be my favorites. Now, the reason I say this is a little bit off-brand or off-script, I'm going to talk about, as you can see, the Iron Maiden Legacy of the Beast, Nights of the Dead live in Mexico City, one of the longest album titles ever. It's actually got three titles of it there. And now, while this is not one of my favorite albums ever, I do love it. This only came out 6 months ago or something, so of course it's not my favorite. But the reason I'm going to talk about this today is two reasons. One, somebody asked, I got a request, and I try to please you people. And I did. I can't believe that I did an unboxing. I've always thought the unboxing of things that's like a sign of a really low society when people do videos of their opening things. But I did it because I received this on a day that I had already done a video of a discography. I had the camera out and I was ready. So I did it. I can't remember who it was, but in the unboxing, somebody said, "Are you going to do a review of it?" And I said no at the time. But then I thought, why not? Now, the second reason, which is actually kind of why that really made me do it, was a guy in the unboxing video. A guy commented that, and I'm going to read his comments in a minute. He didn't like this album. Now, I'll give this guy credit for at least he took made the effort to type out, his reasons for not liking this album. So I'll give him credit and say, a lot of people just say this album sucks, which is pointless to say that. So this guy wrote a kind of a long post. So I wanted to at least acknowledge I totally disagree with just about everything he said. And a lot of people don't like this album, and I have a theory why. And I think a lot of people didn't like it even before it came out. They say the mix is terrible, as if Iron Maiden doesn't know how to mix an album, or whoever they're using to mix their album. This is a band that's been around for 40 years. They're maybe more pro than any band. But for some reason, there's some people that think they know better than Iron Maiden. And what else did people say? The number one thing was that it sounded bad. And it's kind of funny that, you used to listen to an album and you loved it or you hated it based on the music. Now everybody wants to be everybody's an expert now. Everybody, has supersonic hearing and maybe not supersonic, whatever the word is, extra special hearing. And the number one thing that I heard about complaints about this album was that how bad it sounds. The mix is terrible. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to read this guy's comment. Oh, no, I forgot. I almost forgot. I got ahead of myself. The reason why I think so many people said that was when Iron Maiden announced this album, the album came out in November, end of November. They announced it maybe around the end of summer, I think around August. And when they put out the the press release for it, or the comments from both Steve Harris and Rod Smallwood, they kind of, I don't think they came right out and said it, I can't remember, but they kind of gave the impression that, well, we weren't going to really do this we weren't really going to release a live album, but because of the pandemic and because the tour was not canceled but postponed, the continuation of the Legacy of the Beast tour in Europe was postponed. They said, well, we thought we better put something out. They said, and we recorded these shows in Mexico, so we put these together. And I should say, I did go to all three of these shows that this album was taken from. And I've seen Iron Maiden live 12 times, I think, 11. So I think a lot of people took that as, well, they rushed it. They just they panicked and they put it together because they were in a hurry to put out some material, and they just put it together. Anyway, so I'm gonna read this guy's this guy's comment. I will give people their their voice. I will let them be heard if I can open my phone. All right, the guy says, he says the unboxing. Okay, I'll go to his comments about that. Unfortunately, this is the worst live album by Maiden ever! Exclamation point. I don't know why. I mean, I disagree. I don't know. It's not the worst live album by Iron Maiden ever. It broke my heart after first listening. That's sad. Bruce's voice is completely out of order. He destroyed, not just that he didn't sound good. This guy says he destroyed songs like The Trooper, Flight of Icarus, and Sign of the Cross. I know this was on one of the last shows they did, and his voice was worn out. That's another thing. Everybody's an expert on, some people, it's the opposite. Their voice gets stronger as they continue the tour. I think that also goes way, way back to Live After Death in 1985 when they put that out and they recorded the songs. The songs, the shows that those were recorded were from Long Beach, California. And they were late in the tour, and I think sometime after Bruce Dickinson said, yeah, my voice was not good because it was the end of the tour. So now 35 years later, people think that's still the reason. I don't know. Where else? Yeah, so it was one of the last shows they did and his voice was worn out. But if you want to put out a record like this one, everything should be great and awesome. That's why I cannot comprehend why they picked this gig for the live album. Disaster! Exclamation point. The sound of the audience is smothered. That's another comment that I've heard from a lot of people. Not heard, that I torture myself by reading online comments, which you can never get anything good from that. But I never understood. People said that the crowd noise sounds terrible. But I never understood if they meant it sounds enhanced, like if they took it and enhanced it, or this guy says it sounds smothered. So I don't know if he means I assume that means it's not as loud as it should be. I thought people were saying the other thing, that Iron Maiden was, that like a lot of bands they do, they enhance it to make the crowd sound like they were more into it than they were. I don't know. This is this maybe the strangest part. Musically, you can hear that the band are not putting their best foot forward either, so to speak. Iron Maiden is flawless live. This is not just because I'm an Iron Maiden fan. I'm a fan of a lot of bands, and some of the bands are not that good live. Iron Maiden are essentially, and I talked about this when I did a review of the 3 shows whenever they happened in September 2019, and I did a kind of a review. I did a video. You can check it out if you like that kind of thing. And I said Iron Maiden has never had a bad tour. They've never had some bands you say, they weren't that good on this tour. Iron Maiden has never been like that. They've always been very, very pro, very well rehearsed, I guess. Iron Maiden doesn't really make mistakes. So for this guy to say that they weren't, I'm not even sure what that means. They weren't putting their best foot forward musically. I don't know. Now I just don't know what happened during the mixing of all these songs. You know what happened? The same as every other album. It sounds great. When I read all these comments before I listened to the full album when it came out, and when I listened to it, I thought, what are people talking about? Like, I don't know if it's that everybody wants to be an expert. I thought it sounded perfect, flawless. You could hear everything equally clearly. You could pick out even the 3 guitars. You could pick them out. The drums were thunderous and bombastic. The bass, of course, Iron Maiden probably has the biggest bass presence more than any band in at least in metal. And I thought, and I think, because I've listened to this album in full from front to back, all 102 minutes or whatever it is, and I thought it sounds amazing. So again, I'm not sure what people are talking about. Let me see. So I just don't know what happened during the mixing of all these songs. It's awful! Exclamation point. Eddie on the front cover is more funny than scary. That's debatable. I don't know. He says another weird thing about this album. The artwork is not as great as I expected it to be. That doesn't make sense. So because you expected something and it wasn't what you expected, that means it's not great. It's a weird thing to say. Then he adds that it's better on Death on the Road. Yeah, but who cares? Anyway, he says, anyways, it could have been marvelous, but this one leaves much to be desired. And I totally disagree. I think it sounds fucking awesome. It sounds, the crowd to me sounds, and like I said, I was there all 3 nights. It's a loud crowd. Mexico City is a loud crowd, as I think most Latin American cities are. People talk about Santiago, Chile, and Buenos Aires, and Brazil. That Latin people in these Latin American or South American, Central American, North American, and Mexico, in these countries, they're crazy. Concerts are a big deal to people in these countries. They're still kind of new to them. They're not like in the States or Canada or Europe that they've had concerts for as long as we have. So anyway, I think the album sounds fucking great. Everything about it sounds great. I like the artwork. Maybe I'm biased because I like and I could add, I've got here, if I want to really go all out, I could do this. Maybe I should do the rest of the review like this, and I can be Mr. Triple Merch. What do you think of that? All right. So I don't know. I love the album cover. I love I love everything about it. And so now I'll talk about I already talked about the packaging when I did that, so I'm not going to talk about the packaging. It's amazing. Going through track by track as I do. Churchill's speech, of course. Aces High. I will say, Bruce, that one, I guess, I'm not an expert. I don't want to be like these people that know everything. It seems to me like Aces High would be a very difficult song to sing. And he does sound a little bit, he doesn't sound bad. He just doesn't sound, the guy's 60, I guess when they did this, 61, 62, 63, around there. You can't, it's impossible to sound the same, especially with the style of singing as Master Bruce. You're not going to sound the same. The guys, Paul Stanley sounds bad. Paul Stanley sounded bad for years, and Kiss is my #1 band ever. Bruce Dickinson, he just, it sounds different, not bad. Aces High. Where Eagles Dare, thunderous. The drums at the beginning of that song, I remember it in the concert and listening to it again. It took me back to it. The drums, the drum intro of Where Eagles Dare are just thunderous, just so heavy. And that song was really, really heavy live. 2 Minutes to Midnight, that's a classic song. I love that song. Iron Maiden plays it almost every tour. I think maybe they skip it occasionally, but no complaints about 2 Minutes to Midnight. The Klansmen, to be honest, I don't know that I'd ever heard the Klansmen ever in my life until I think by the time this tour came around and I saw it, I knew that they were doing it, of course. And so I think I had downloaded it at that point, but I never heard it until they started this tour. I thought, all right, they're doing this song. I should familiarize myself with it. Amazing. Now, I don't really I talked about this when I talked about Iron Maiden's discography. I never cared about Blaze Bayley, but Bruce Dickinson doing the Klansmen is just fantastic. Trooper, it's another, I don't know why people complain that they play the Trooper every time. If you have a problem with hearing the Trooper once every 3 years live, it's 4 minutes. People say, I'm not going to see Iron Maiden this time because they play the Trooper every time. It's 4 minutes every 3 years of your life. Stop it. Revelations was a song, that was another one I never really got into until when I saw them in 2008 on the Somewhere Back in Time tour. They did that, and I never got into Peace of Mind as much as most people. I guess a lot of people would say that I would say that it's overrated. I just didn't get into it as much as most people. But when they did it on that tour, and I saw them twice on that tour, on the Somewhere Back in Time tour, I saw them on the first leg, and then they came back a year later to Mexico City. And then when they put out Flight 666, and I saw them there, it really, really hit me. I love Revelations. That's a fantastic song. And I'm especially live with the drapes or the curtain of the stained glass for Revelations. Amazing. Great song live. For the Greater Good of God, that's from A Matter of Life or Death. That's another one that I never got into, but live, great song. I don't think they'll ever do it again live. I think some of these songs, they kind of rare. They bring them out occasionally. I don't think they'll do For the Greater Good of God again, but I liked it. It was good. Wicker Man, that's a good one. Also more from the modern era. That was from 2000. Wicker Man is good. Sign of the Cross, that's in the same category as the Klansmen. This guy that I was talking about on YouTube said Bruce ruined. Destroyed was the word. I don't know. I thought Sign of the Cross, that was another one that like I said, like Klansmen, I wasn't familiar with it, but I listened to it. And Bruce Dickinson singing Sign of the Cross. Oh, killer. I wish they could record that with Bruce on vocals. Again, very heavy, similar to Where Eagles Dare. Very, very heavy. I think not just the musically, but the whole tone of the song. Bruce was holding the cross live. Obviously, you can't see that, but on the live album, sounds great. Flight of Icarus. I love that song. I really got into that song, especially on Live After Death. Like I said, I wasn't a huge Peace of Mind fan, but I like that song. I remember the video for it was on a lot. Flight of Icarus is fantastic. Live, Bruce had the flamethrowers. I took a video of that song, and you can see Bruce seems very dangerous what he's doing. He almost burns poor Nico a couple of times. Fear of the Dark, a lot of people complain about that one too, that they do Fear of the Dark every time. No big deal. It's not my favorite song, but it is very cool live. Number of the Beast, one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs. I love that song. I love it live. I love it studio. I love it all the time. Iron Maiden, the song Iron Maiden. Of course, they always finish the main set with Iron Maiden. The Evil That Men Do. Good. Not a favorite song of mine, but I like that. I like Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. Hallowed Be Thy Name. Some people would say the greatest Iron Maiden song ever, but I do like that they drop it from the set list every once in a while. They did it on Book of Souls tour, the tour before Legacy of the Beast, but they had skipped it the tour before, which was Made in England. So it's cool to see it back. That's, I think, like I said, I think I said most people consider Hallowed Be Thy Name probably to be the number one Iron Maiden song. It's not number one for me, but I do love it. And they finished with Run to the Hills. That's another one that they don't play. That's arguably their biggest song. And it's one that they don't do every tour. And I think it's a great closing song. Very anthemic for Iron Maiden. So that's it for Legacy of the Beast. I will say, maybe I feel like I have to say, and I can take this off now. If I had a couple of, and they're not even complaints, and they're not even negative, but just a couple of little things about this album. One thing, small thing that I wish was a little bit different. There are some seams between the songs where you can hear that they clearly cut from one, whether it was one show or whatever, to another, because they recorded it over 3 different nights. I don't know. They didn't put in the liner notes what night each song was from. I don't know if it was the first, second, or third. So I wish, especially before the Klansmen, they cut out. Bruce made kind of a long. I think they cut out a lot of Bruce's banter, between song banter. Not I think, I know. So I wish they had left that in, especially the intro to the Klansmen. Maybe they think it's too personal if he talks about Mexico and things like that. Maybe that alienates the rest of the Iron Maiden fan base around the world. Maybe it's because they had to cut down the time to fit it onto the triple vinyl or to fit it onto CD. I'm not sure. But again, a very small thing. Not much to complain about that. And the other thing, and when they announced this, the first thing I thought was, I remember when I saw it, I thought there's going to be a Blu-ray or a DVD, and then when I read the press release, there wasn't. And I thought, that sucks. But instantly I thought, well, that's because the tour is, at least as of now still, the tour is going to continue next year. And I understand why if this is their reason for not putting it out, it might, maybe take away some ticket sales, or, people who haven't seen it yet. If you can see it on DVD, it's like if you put out a movie on DVD and then put it in the theater. It's kind of like that. So I would guess, this is my theory, that they didn't release a Blu-ray, because they traditionally do release a live album and a video or DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, from the same tour. I guess they didn't this time because the tour is still continuing, and they don't want to spoil it for people who are going to go see it next year. God, I hope it's next year or whenever. And about the future of Iron Maiden, I should say also, I don't know what's going to happen. The longer that this pandemic goes on and the more this gets delayed, according to rumors, and these rumors always come true, they recorded a full album. It's in the can, ready to go a long time ago, like 2 years ago. And my guess is they would have finished the Legacy of the Beast tour last year and then put out, assuming that it's done, a new album this year and then toured behind it. And then I think then maybe next year or in 2023, if coronavirus hadn't happened, I think Iron Maiden would have done their final tour. I think they've got one, I guess they're going to finish the Legacy of the Beast tour next year and hopefully do one last album and then tour behind that, a regular new album cycle, and then take some time off and then do a final tour. They can't go on much longer. Nico McBrain said a couple of years ago that he doesn't have too much left in him. He's only got a few years left. And they've lost, I guess by the time they get back, they will have lost 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. So that's my my speculation on what's going to happen with Iron Maiden in the future. So getting back to this, this is not one of my favorite albums of all time, like in the other videos that I've done. But you know what? I do love this album.